Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how to save money on your prescriptions. Now this can be somewhat of a complicated topic, so I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. If you have any questions, as always, drop them below and I'll answer them as I see them. Now the first thing is many people still have prescriptions that are covered by their insurance. So if you have prescription insurance, the number one thing you want to make sure you do is give them a call. So I suggest everyone keep up with what prescriptions that they are actively taking. The best way to do this is keep a list. So you're going to create your list and you're going to write down every medication that you take consistently, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, every 3 months. You're going to write down every prescription that you are actively filling in the pharmacy and taking. Then you're going to give that insurance company a call. You're going to let them know these are the prescriptions that you're currently taking and you want to know what is the best price that you can get on them, or if they are covered by your policy. Now insurance companies have what's called a formulary, and a formulary is just basically a master list. So these are all of the prescriptions that your particular policy covers for you. The next question that you're going to want to ask is if you have a co-insurance versus a co-payment. Now a co-payment is going to be a set price. You're going to pay relatively the same amount no matter where you fill your prescriptions, whereas a co-insurance is going to be a percentage. So you may pay 30% and the insurance may cover 70%, and that's going to mean that wherever you purchase the prescription from, your price is going to vary depending on what the cash price is for that prescription. So if we're looking at something like Losartan, and at my pharmacy it costs $10, but at CVS it's $50, then your co-payment at my pharmacy would be $3 versus at CVS being $15. And that's how you would be able to calculate based on having a co-insurance versus a co-payment. The next thing that you're going to want to do, so you've called them, you know what's on formulary, you know if you have a co-payment versus a co-insurance, you're going to want to ask them, is there a preferred pharmacy for your policy? Now what does a preferred pharmacy mean? That means that your insurance company and a particular pharmacy have negotiated where you are going to pay the lowest price at this particular pharmacy. So a lot of times we see that patients have CVS, or they may have Walgreens as a preferred pharmacy. So if your co-payment is $10, you're going to pay $10 with us, but you may pay $8.50 at a CVS or a Walgreens. Or sometimes the medication just is not covered. They will give you 1 or 2 fills outside of that preferred pharmacy, but after that you have to fill it at CVS. So you're going to want to know that. The other thing you're going to want to ask or know is if you are required to use mail order. So many insurance companies have their own mail order pharmacy where the doctor sends in the prescription to that pharmacy, they fill it, and then they mail it out to you. Now often what we see at the community level is that patients have to opt out of this. And sometimes we see that they can't, that patients can't. But you need to know that, because a lot of times what will happen is a patient will be filling a prescription at our pharmacy 5, 6, and the 7th time the insurance says no more, they've reached the maximum, and a lot of times it happens at inopportune times. So the patient is getting ready to travel, they're all out, things that kind of puts them in a very sticky situation. So therefore you're going to want to know if that is required on your policy. Now sometimes what happens is this may be a requirement for the policy, but the insurance allows the patient to opt out, which just means that they need to give the insurance a call and say, hey, I don't want to use mail order, or I can't use mail order, or whatever the situation may be, but it oftentimes takes a call on their part. Now that is the gist of how you're going to get your prescriptions most cost effectively if you have prescription insurance and you are preparing for your prescription insurance to cover the medication. Moving right along to you don't have prescription insurance, or your prescription insurance doesn't cover a particular medication, or you know the cost is just not that great. What are the steps that you can take? I would say discount cards would probably fall next. Now, it's important to remember that with discount cards, specifically we're talking about a GoodRx, a Single Care, that is not insurance. It is not something where the company lists the price at saying, hey, we charge $5 for this medication, and that has to be true. There are a lot of times where these discount cards will say a particular medication is $5 or $10. They basically list the price, and then when you come into the pharmacy, that's not the price that you saw. So a lot of times we're explaining to patients that these prices aren't always correct. And the expectation is they see the price and it should be that. The other thing to know is the pharmacies aren't the ones that are listing these prices. So when you see that $5 for CVS, CVS isn't saying, hey, this is gonna cost you $5. That discount card is saying, this medication is gonna cost you $5 at that pharmacy. So if you run into any type of discrepancies in price, you're gonna wanna call the discount card. Now they can get very tricky, and I just don't have a ton of experience or a ton of knowledge with discount cards, so I won't speak too much to what I don't know. But from my understanding from my colleagues, these companies can be predatory, and they're trying to get your information and sell it. So they may do very sneaky things to get the person to give up their information, like telling you that a very expensive medication is gonna be cheap when in fact it's not, or telling you a medication is gonna be cheap so that you will pay for the benefit of using that card, or like you sign up for the membership for this card, but the prices are not, they don't agree. So they'll tell you, hey, if you pay $20 a month for this, next tier membership, then all of these medications will only cost you $5, when that's not true. Now, I can't speak to that because I don't know. I don't use the discount cards for myself, and I don't typically use them for my patients. And a lot of people will say that pharmacists are being, they're price gouging by not. But what also is very important to know is that we are bound by a lot of different laws. So if you participate in Medicare, you're not really allowed to, I won't say you're not allowed, but the slope gets very slippery with what you're allowed to offer to patients and what you're not. You can't be seen as, coaching them or guiding them one way or the other. So I think most company policies, at least the companies that I've tended to work for, were kind of to stay out of it. And that's what we do. If you participate in government programs, that's probably the safest thing for you to do. Now, what I have seen discount companies do is something tricky like this. Brand Retin-A. Most people think brand versus generic. Brand prescriptions are gonna for sure be more expensive than generic prescriptions. That is what most people think, and typically they're right. So I have seen GoodRx say, okay, this 45 gram tube of Retin-A brand is only gonna be $40. So you bring me in the coupon, we run the prescription through the coupon information, and then when we get to the register, we say, oh, this medication is $130. And you're like, no, that's not right. Online it says $40. So you go back down to the window and we're looking and we can't find the discrepancy, and you're pulling it up on your phone to show us. And remember, this is not a price that my company has said that this prescription would be. This is a price that discount card has said that this prescription will be at my company. When we look into it, for sure it is for the brand, and the brand is unavailable. Now, I don't know how certain that the discount cards know when a medication is unavailable, but this particular medication, I feel strongly that they know, and it is a tactic because it happens quite often, and it's been a while since the brand of this medication has been available. So just be mindful when it comes to the discount cards. Make sure you're protecting your information as much as you can with that. So that's my little spiel on discount cards. And please, please, please always be nice to your pharmacy staff. And I tell my staff the same thing. Please, please, please be nice to our patients. So I'm not just saying this from, you know, a working in the pharmacy point of view, but I'm saying it because a lot of times patients think that we are setting the price on medications, or that we get a fee from the medications that goes in our pocket, like some sort of commission, and that's not true. Okay, so that's discount cards. And the next thing is gonna be just, you're gonna have to do some legwork. And I know increasingly that becomes difficult because it takes a lot to get pharmacy staff on the phone. It does. I know. I call other pharmacies for transfers, and we have a policy in my pharmacy that you pick up the phone by the second ring. I don't care what you're doing. If a friend hasn't gotten it, you've gotten it. But the next thing is just legwork. You're gonna have to get on the phone and call around to pharmacies and ask. Again, back to that little Cinepril. Hi, do you have Cinepril 10 milligrams in stock? Can you tell me what the cash price would be for 30 tablets? And you're just gonna have to write it down to see who has the cheapest price. Now, I think it's generally accepted in the pharmacy world, or amongst patients who really drill down their costs on medications, that Costco typically has the best price for medications, especially veterinary medications, and also veterinary medications. Yeah, Costco typically has the best prices for medications. Specifically, they tend to have really good prices for the veterinary medications. I do know, if you're a member, they also offer a sort of member discount. And I do know that you can go online and you can check the price of medications, at least some medications, on their website. I don't know about other pharmacies. I haven't heard patients say. I try to keep a little Rolodex of what I hear patients say, and I've heard patients say that before. But it's just going to be calling around, going to the pharmacy to see how much these medications are going to cost. Now, if you get to a price that is just out of this world, too good to be true, you go somewhere, someone says something is, I don't know, Ozempic, you get a 3-month supply for $5, no insurance, be wary. It's giving price gouging, and maybe the company doesn't have the medication available, and that is why this, you know, unbelievable price is getting circulated around. But calling around and seeing what the price is and comparing it to what your insurance has said is going to cost, what a discount card is saying is going to cost. Typically, just very typically, insurance is going to give you the best price. Most times if you have a good policy, and I think patients know whether they have a good policy or not. If it's a high deductible policy, a low deductible policy, they pay a lot of money each month, they'll say, oh, you know, I have good insurance. You'll just know from when you sign up for the insurance that you have a good policy. Then typically speaking, that's gonna be the best price for you. There are outlier times where if it's a high dollar medication, if it's a high tier medication, that the cash price or the discount card is gonna be the best price for you. And then lastly is going to be manufacturer coupons. Now, this is gonna be specifically for brand drugs. So if something like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Eliquis, Xarelto, these are typically very expensive prescriptions that are not generic or not readily available as generic. You will be able to look online. You can Google the medication, something very simple like Ozempic discount card, or Ozempic manufacturer, or Ozempic copay. That should bring you to the manufacturer's websites and typically manufacturers will have programs, copay programs for patients. Now, you have to read them very thoroughly, because sometimes if you have government funded insurance, you're not eligible to participate. What is government funded insurance? If you have TRICARE, so that's going to mean if you have TRICARE, if you have Medicaid, Medicare, a lot of times you will be excluded from using the manufacturer's coupon. If you have federal FEP that is not through the workplace, that means you have a government job and government funded insurance. Typically that's not covered. But outside of that, if you don't have any of that, you typically will qualify for these discount cards or copay assistance cards that are offered through the manufacturer. What's the other thing? Normally you have to provide some information to the manufacturer. So you have to give them your name, your email address. You may have to sign up for, you know, some course where someone reaches out to you or sends you some information specifically for those Ozempic or Mounjaro cards. I don't think there are too many instances where you can opt out of those programs, but certainly you can look to the manufacturer for discounts and copay assistance. You just have to provide information and then ultimately see if you will apply. Now, a lot of times you will see that information listed as save up to $1,500, or your copay could be as little as $25 per fill for 5 fills. And what's important to note when you are dealing with these copay assistance cards is a lot of times what you will ultimately pay depends on whether or not your insurance covered anything, how much your insurance covered. Yeah, basically those two things, because some of these copay cards don't work if your insurance doesn't cover it. And sometimes these cards only work if your insurance doesn't cover it. So just make sure you read, because those are things that we come in contact with a lot. Outside of that, you also can do little things like, for instance, a drug like metoprolol. You need 12.5, or you need 25 milligrams, or you need 50 milligrams. It comes as a 100 milligram tablet. When I did an internship with one of the insurance companies, they were working on a initiative that was called half tablet, where basically patients would get a smaller supply of a bigger dose of medication and they would half it, and that saved them some money. And that too can happen in retail. Sometimes just a therapeutic interchange. So you're on Valsartan, but it's cheaper for you to purchase Losartan. Those are things that unfortunately require you to talk with your pharmacist about. I hate to do this to your pharmacist, but giving your pharmacist a call and saying, hey, I currently take this medication. This is how much I pay. Can you tell me the cost of this medication? That's another way to do it. I hope this information helps. I hope it's been all inclusive. It's been as inclusive as I can think. I'm trying to keep it short because I don't want you guys to lose I don't want to lose your attention. I don't want your attention to wander off, but I do want to provide you with some good information, so that if you are struggling with affording your medications, that at least this will give you some resources or some options to kind of delve into and see if you can lower the cost. I don't think anything that I'm saying is novel, but I do recognize that a lot of times patients just don't know. So I hope that what I've provided you find some benefit from. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them below. As I see them and time allows, I will certainly respond to them. And until next time, bye.